My name is Evelyn Booker, and the day my family counted me out for good was the same day they stopped lowering their voices around me. They didn't whisper anymore. They talked like I wasn't even there. That's how I knew. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, right after church. The kind of Sunday where everyone pretends to be kind because God is still fresh on their minds. We were all in my sister Lorraine's living room. The windows were open, letting in warm air and noise from the street. Plates were stacked on the table. Someone had turned the TV down low, but not off. I was sitting in the corner chair, the one with the loose leg. Nobody ever fixed it, even though I'd mentioned it more than once. I didn't complain that day. I just sat and listened. "She's not the same anymore," Lorraine said. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was casual, like she was talking about old furniture. "I know," my nephew Caleb replied. "She forgets things. She moves slow. We can't keep waiting on her." Waiting on me. I blinked slowly and kept my hands folded in my lap. My daughter Marcia stood near the kitchen doorway. She didn't look at me. "We've done what we can," she said. "Mama had her time." Had. Past tense. Like my life was already over. Something in my chest tightened. Not pain. Pressure. Like air being squeezed out. I wanted to speak. I really did. But years of being told, "Sit down, Mama," and I got it, Mama had trained me well. So I stayed quiet. That was my mistake. Lorraine sighed. "We need to talk about what's next," she said, "because this can't go on." "What do you mean?" someone asked. She hesitated, then said it. "Evelyn can't live alone anymore." The room went still. Not shocked still. Decided still. Like they'd already agreed without me. "I do just fine," I said. My voice sounded thin. Small. Everyone turned to look at me, surprised I'd spoken at all. Marcia forced a smile. "Mama, nobody saying you don't," she said. "But you know things change." I stared at her. "What things?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said something else. "You forgot to pay the light bill last month." I nodded. "And you forgot to call me back for 3 weeks," I replied. "But nobody took your house away." The room shifted. Uncomfortable. "That's different," Caleb said quickly. "How?" I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because there was no good answer. Lorraine cleared her throat. "We're just being realistic," she said. "You're not getting younger." I smiled faintly. "No," I said, "but I'm not dead either." Nobody laughed. Marcia crossed her arms. "Mama, you don't have any savings left," she said. "You don't work. You don't drive much anymore." Each word landed like a small stone. "You need help," she finished. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said, "sometimes." Then I looked around the room. But help doesn't mean control. Silence again. This one sharper. That's when Lorraine said the sentence that changed everything. "Evelyn, be honest," she said. "What do you really have left?" I felt it then. The moment. The line they crossed without realizing. I sat up straighter. "What do I have left?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "What do you contribute now?" Contribute. Like my worth had an expiration date. I looked at each face in the room. People I'd fed. Babysat. Loaned money to. Covered for. Prayed for. Loved. And I realized something terrifying and clear. They had already decided. This meeting wasn't for discussion. It was for announcement. Before I could answer, Caleb laughed softly. "Come on, Auntie," he said. "Be real, you're basically done." Done. That word echoed in my ears. Done. Finished. Used up. I stood up. The chair leg wobbled, but I steadied myself. My knees shook. Not from weakness. From anger, I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. "I am not done," I said. Marcia sighed loudly. "Mama, nobody is trying to disrespect you," she said. I turned to her. "Then why does this feel like a funeral where I'm still breathing?" I asked. She flinched. "Good." Lorraine shook her head. "You're being dramatic," she said. "This is about planning." "Planning what?" I asked. "My ending." That hit. I could see it in their eyes. Guilt. Quick and shallow. "We're thinking assisted living," Marcia said quickly. "Just until things are stable." "Stable for who?" I asked. She didn't answer. I looked down at my hands. Old hands. Hands that had scrubbed floors. Held bobbies. Written checks. Buried a husband. Hands that shook sometimes now. But still worked. Still mine. "I will not go somewhere I didn't choose," I said. Caleb rolled his eyes. "You don't have a choice," he muttered. That's when something inside me snapped into place. I picked up my purse. Slowly. Deliberately. "I think this conversation is over," I said. Lorraine scoffed. "Where are you going?" she asked. I met her eyes. "Home," I said, "while I still have one." Marcia followed me to the door. "Mama, don't be like this," she whispered. "You're embarrassing yourself." I stopped. Turned. And for the first time in years, I spoke without shrinking. "No," I said, "you're embarrassing me." Her mouth fell open. I walked out. The ride home felt longer than usual. Every stoplight. Every bump. Every thought heavy. I replayed their words again and again. "You're done. What do you have left? You don't have a choice." By the time I reached my driveway, my hands were tight on the steering wheel. I sat in the car for a long time. Then I laughed. Not happy laughter. The kind that comes when something is finally clear. They thought I was finished. Counted out. A burden. I stepped inside my small house and locked the door. I leaned my back against it and slid down to the floor. My heart was pounding. Not from fear. From decision. On the coffee table sat a folder. One I hadn't opened in months. Inside were papers. Statements. Letters. Numbers. Things I'd been tracking quietly. Because even when they thought I was forgetting, I was watching. I pulled the folder closer. Opened it. And whispered to myself, "They don't know what I know." Because while my family was busy counting me out, I had been counting something else. Not losses. Wins. And tomorrow morning, they were going to find out just how wrong they were. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not sleep much that night. Not because I was worried. Because my mind was busy remembering. Remembering all the moments they thought I wasn't paying attention. All the times they spoke over me. All the times they assumed I didn't understand numbers anymore. They were wrong. Very wrong. The folder on my coffee table wasn't new. I had started it 2 years ago, the first time my daughter Marcia said, "Mama, you don't need to worry about that anymore." That sentence had sounded kind on the outside, but something about it made my stomach twist. So instead of arguing, I smiled. And I started watching. I opened the folder again and spread the papers across the table. Bank statements. Investment letters. Property tax receipts. A small notebook with dates written in neat handwriting. My handwriting. Still steady. Still sharp. People think being quiet means being unaware. But quiet people hear everything. 2 years earlier, after my husband passed, I received a small life insurance payout. Nothing flashy. Just enough to breathe. Marcia offered to help manage it. I said yes. But I never stopped checking. Every statement. every balance, every movement. I noticed patterns. I noticed growth. I noticed mistakes they didn't realize I saw. That was my first win. Not giving up control, just letting them think I had. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to make tea. My knees creaked. My back ached. But my mind felt clear. Sharp like it used to be when I balanced checkbooks by hand. I carried my tea back to the living room and sat down. Time to count. The second win came from the little duplex on Maple Street. The one Lorraine said was too much trouble to keep. The one they wanted me to sell cheap. I didn't. I listened. I nodded. Then I rented it out quietly. Good tenants. Long term. Cash flow steady. They never asked about it again. They assumed I had sold it. I never corrected them. I flipped to the rental agreement in the folder. Paid on time. Every month. That money sat untouched. Growing. That was my second win. The third win was the hardest. Learning how to say nothing. When Marcia complained about money. When Caleb joked about me being old school. When Lorraine talked about handling things. I let them. Silence gave me space. And space gave me power. By morning, sunlight filled my living room. I stood up slowly and stretched. Today was not a revenge day. It was a reveal day. But not yet. First, I needed to be sure. I dressed carefully. Simple clothes. Nothing fancy. A soft blue blouse. Dark pants. Comfortable shoes. I wasn't dressing to impress. I was dressing to move. My first stop was the bank. The same bank Marcia thought I had stopped understanding. I walked in calmly. The teller smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Booker," she said. She knew my name. That mattered. "I'd like to review my accounts," I said. She nodded and typed. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's a healthy balance," she said. I smiled faintly. "Yes," I replied, "it is." The manager came over. "Everything looks excellent," he said. "Your investments performed better than expected." Better than expected. I thanked him. I wasn't surprised. I had done my homework. As I left the bank, I felt something warm spread through my chest. Not pride. Validation. I wasn't imagining my strength. It was real. Next stop, the duplex. I parked across the street and watched the building for a moment. Quiet. Stable. Mine. I thought of Lorraine's voice. "What do you really have left?" I smiled. "Plenty." On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Marcia. I didn't answer. Not yet. She left a message. "Mama, we need to talk about yesterday." I listened. Then deleted it. Some conversations don't deserve immediate access. That was another win. When I got home, I sat down with my notebook. I wrote at the top of the page. My wins. Then I listed them. One by one. Small and big. Financial. Emotional. Mental. Every boundary I had learned late, but learned well. In the afternoon, Lorraine called. Her tone was softer now. "Evelyn," she said, "yesterday got out of hand." I said nothing. She continued. "We were just worried." I sipped my tea. "Worry sounds different than planning my exit," I said calmly. She sighed. "Well, maybe we should all sit down again." I smiled. "Yes," I said, "we should." That evening, I received a group message. Family dinner. Sunday. At my house. They had suggested it. I agreed. Because now, I was ready. That night, I slept deeply. Not because I was tired. Because I was prepared. Sunday came quickly. I cleaned my house slowly. Not nervously. Deliberately. I placed the folder on the dining table. Centered. Visible. Not hidden. When the doorbell rang, my heart beat steady. Lorraine came in first. Then Caleb. Then Marcia. They all looked around. Like something felt different. It was. We sat. Small talk floated awkwardly. Then Lorraine cleared her throat. So, about last week. I raised my hand gently. No, I said. This time I talk first. They froze. I reached for the folder. Opened it. And slid the first paper forward. This, I said, is my bank statement. Marcia frowned. Why are you showing us this? She asked. I met her eyes. Because you asked what I had left. I slid the next paper. And this, I continued, is my rental income. Caleb leaned forward. You still own that place? He asked. Yes, I said, and it's doing very well. Lorraine's face changed. Slowly. Evelyn, why didn't you say anything? I smiled. Because nobody asked with respect, I replied. Silence. Heavy. I slid the final paper forward. And this, I said, is my plan. They stared. Marcia swallowed. What plan? She asked. I folded my hands. My plan to stay exactly where I am, I said. In my home, in my life, with my choices. Caleb laughed nervously. You're serious? I nodded. Completely. Lorraine leaned back. Well, I guess we were wrong. I tilted my head. You weren't wrong about one thing, I said. I did change. They waited. I got stronger. Nobody spoke. I stood up slowly. This conversation is over, I said, but our relationship isn't if you learn how to speak to me. Marcia's eyes filled with tears. Mama, she started. I raised my hand again. Respect first, I said gently. Love after. They left quietly. No shouting. No drama. Just shock. The good kind. When the door closed, I exhaled. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. Looked at myself. Really looked. You did good, I whispered. They had counted me out for good. But they had forgotten something important. I had been counting all along. And this was only the beginning of my wins. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Winning quietly feels good. Winning out loud. That's when people start charging you a price. The house felt different after they left that Sunday evening. Not empty. Clear. Like air after a storm finally moves. I washed the cups slowly, one by one, listening to the water run. My hands didn't shake. My mind didn't race. I had said what needed to be said, and I hadn't begged for understanding. That alone felt like a victory. But I knew better than to believe that was the end. When people lose control over you, they rarely walk away politely. The backlash didn't come right away. It crept in. Soft at first. Like concern. On Tuesday morning, Marcia showed up unannounced. I was in the garden, kneeling carefully, pulling weeds from the corner bed. I heard the gate open, then her voice. Mama. I didn't answer right away. I finished pulling the weed, brushed the dirt from my hands, and stood up slowly. Yes, I said. She looked me up and down. You shouldn't be bending like that, she said. You could hurt yourself. I smiled faintly. I've been bending all my life, I replied. I'm still here. She sighed. You know that's not what I mean. I tilted my head. Then say what you mean, I said. She followed me inside, without waiting to be invited. That used to be normal. Now it felt intrusive. She sat at the table, where the folder had been 2 days earlier. So, she said, folding her hands, everyone been talking. I figured, I replied, pouring myself a glass of water. Lorraine's name came up first. She thinks you embarrassed her, Marcia said. I took a sip. Lorraine embarrassed herself, I replied calmly. Marcia frowned. That wasn't necessary, she said. I looked at her. Neither was planning my life without me, I said. Silence stretched. She shifted in her chair. Mama, we're worried, she said again. You're acting different. I smiled. Yes, I said, I am. She leaned forward. It feels like you're pushing us away. I set my glass down. No, I said gently. It feels like I stopped letting you pull me. Her eyes flashed. That's not fair. It's accurate, I replied. She stood up. You think because you have a little money now, you don't need anyone, she snapped. I raised an eyebrow. A little, I asked. She pressed her lips together. You know what I mean. I nodded. Yes, I said. I know exactly what you mean. She paced the room. You don't understand how this looks, she said. People are saying you've changed, that you're stubborn, that you're being influenced. I laughed softly. Influenced by who? I asked. My own spine. She stopped packing. This isn't a joke, Mama. I'm not laughing, I replied. She lowered her voice. You could lose support, she warned. If something happens, people might not rush to help. That sentence landed heavy. Because it was a threat dressed as concern. I took a deep breath. Then I'll learn who actually supports me, I said. Her shoulders slumped. I don't recognize you, she said. I walked closer and looked at her carefully. That's because you never really saw me, I replied. She turned away. After she left, I sat down slowly. That conversation had cost me more than I wanted to admit. Not because I regretted it. Because it confirmed something painful. My independence scared them. The next few days proved it. Caleb stopped calling. Lorraine stopped sending messages. Family group chats went quiet. At first it hurt. Not sharply. Dully. Like realizing you were only included when you were convenient. On Thursday, I got a call from the church office. Mrs. Booker, the woman said kindly, we heard you might need help. I almost laughed. I'm doing just fine, I replied. Well, she said hesitantly, your sister expressed concern. Concern. That word again. Thank you, I said, but I didn't ask for intervention. She apologized awkwardly and hung up. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. So that was the strategy. If they couldn't control me privately, they'd do it publicly. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote a new list. Costs of winning. Loneliness. Misunderstanding. People revealing who they are. I underlined the last one twice. On Saturday morning, something unexpected happened. A knock at the door. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just hesitant. I opened it to see my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, standing there with a loaf of bread. I hope this isn't strange, she said, but I heard some things and I wanted to check on you. I smiled. It's not strange at all, I said. Come in. She sat at my kitchen table and listened while I spoke. Not interrupted. Not corrected. Just listened. When I finished, she shook her head. They did you wrong, she said simply. Something loosened in my chest. Thank you, I said. You remind me of my mother, she added. Strong, quiet, always underestimated. I laughed softly. That seems to be a pattern, I replied. After she left, I realized something important. Losing some people made room for others. Better ones. That evening, I went through my finances again. Not to reassure myself. To plan. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. I called a lawyer the following Monday. Not because I planned to fight anyone. but because knowledge is power. He explained my rights, my protections, my options. I took notes, asked questions, didn't apologize once. When Marcia found out I had spoken to a lawyer, she called immediately. "Why would you do that?" she demanded. "Because I can," I replied. "You're making this worse." "For who?" I asked. She didn't answer. That night, I lay awake thinking about something Lorraine had said. "What do you contribute now?" I smiled in the dark. More than they ever knew. By the end of the week, the whispers had turned sharper. Words like prideful and difficult floated back to me. I didn't chase them. I didn't correct them. I let people believe what made them comfortable. Because the truth was this: standing up had cost me approval, but staying silent would have cost me myself. On Sunday morning, I dressed and went to church alone. I sat where I always did. Some people smiled. Some looked away. I held my head high. After service, a woman I barely knew touched my arm. "I saw how they spoke to you once," she whispered. "I wish I'd said something." I smiled at her. "You're saying something now," I replied. That afternoon, I realized the hardest part wasn't proving them wrong. It was living without their applause. And I was learning how to do that. Slowly, steadily. But just when I thought the storm had passed, a message came that reminded me. Some people don't accept your strength. They challenge it. And the next challenge would come from the one person who knew exactly where to strike. Because proving them wrong always invites one final test. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always believed betrayal came from enemies. I was wrong. It comes from people who once stood close enough to call themselves support. The first sign was the letter. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, folded neatly, my name typed clearly on the front. Evelyn Booker. No return address. That alone made my chest tighten. I opened it slowly at the kitchen table, the same table where I once helped my daughter with spelling words and math homework. The words inside were polite. Too polite. "Mrs. Booker, we are writing regarding concerns that have been raised about your well-being and financial decision-making. It has been suggested that you may be vulnerable to exploitation and in need of evaluation." I stopped reading. My hands were steady. My heart was not. Evaluation. Vulnerable. Those words are never used to help. They are used to remove control. I finished the letter carefully. Someone in my family, had contacted an agency claiming I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. Claimed I was confused. Claimed I was being manipulated. Claimed I was unsafe. I laughed once. A short, sharp sound. So this was the new plan. I folded the letter and placed it beside my tea. "Nice try," I said out loud. But even as I said it, I knew this wasn't a joke. This was serious. Within 2 hours, my phone rang. A woman introduced herself calmly, professionally. She spoke like she was already convinced. "We just want to make sure you're okay," she said. I smiled into the phone. "I'm perfectly fine," I replied. "Well," she continued, "we'll need to schedule a visit." "No," I said gently, "you won't." There was a pause. "Mrs. Booker, this isn't optional." I leaned back in my chair. "Yes," I said, "it is." I hung up and immediately called the lawyer I'd spoken to earlier in the week. He listened without interrupting. Then he said something that confirmed my fear. "This is a control move," he said. "Someone is trying to establish doubt about your capacity." "Can they?" I asked. "Only if you let them," he replied, "and only if you aren't prepared." I exhaled slowly. "I'm prepared," I said. By that afternoon, I knew exactly who was behind it. Lorraine. She had always been the organizer. The one who made calls for your own good. The one who smiled while moving pieces behind the scenes. I didn't call her. Not yet. I wanted proof. The next day, Marcia came by again. This time, she didn't knock. She walked in with urgency written all over her face. "Mama, what did you do?" she demanded. I looked up calmly from my book. "I lived," I said. "What did you do?" Her face flushed. "You called a lawyer," she said. "Yes," I replied. "And now agencies are involved," she snapped. "Because someone involved them," I said. She froze. "I didn't mean it like that," she said quickly. I closed my book. "Then explain exactly what you meant," I replied. She hesitated. "I just told Aunt Lorraine I was worried," she said. I stood up slowly. "And she decided I needed to be managed," I finished. Marcia looked down. "You scared her," she whispered. I laughed softly. "No," I said. "I scared her control." I walked to the drawer and pulled out a folder. Not the old one. A new one. Inside were copies of every statement, every receipt, every document. I placed it on the table. "This is my life," I said. "Organized, clear, legal." Marcia stared at it. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," she said. I shook my head. "You're making it smaller so you can hold it," I replied. She stepped closer. "Mama, please," she said. "Just let us help you." I met her eyes. "You don't want to help me," I said. "You want to help yourselves feel comfortable again." That hurt her. I could see it. But it was still true. That evening, I received another call. This time a man. Calmer. Sharper. He wanted to check in. I told him to contact my lawyer. The line went quiet. Then he agreed. That felt like a win. By Friday, the truth came out. My neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, knocked on my door again. Her face was tight. "I thought you should know," she said. "I overheard Lorraine talking. She said she was handling the Evelyn situation." I smiled sadly. Handling. Like I was paperwork. I thanked her and closed the door. Then I sat down and let myself feel it. The anger. The betrayal. The disappointment. Not because I was weak. Because pretending I wasn't hurt would be another lie. That night, I wrote another list. Things I will no longer allow. People deciding for me. Concern without consent. Love that requires obedience. I underlined the last one 3 times. Saturday morning, I called Lorraine. She answered quickly. "Evelyn," she said brightly, "I was just thinking about you." I smiled. "Funny," I replied. "I was just reading your letter." Her voice tightened. "What letter?" she asked. "The one your concern started," I said. Silence. Then she sighed. "I was only trying to help," she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Help without permission is control," I said calmly. "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "No," I replied. "I'm being clear." She raised her voice. "You're not thinking straight." That did it. "I am thinking more clearly than I have in years," I said. "And I will not be evaluated, relocated, or managed by you." "You don't get to decide that alone," she said. I smiled. "Yes," I replied. "I do." She hung up on me. Good. That meant she heard me. By the end of the weekend, the attempted intervention stopped. Not because they changed their minds. Because they realized I wasn't alone. I had records. Legal backing. Witnesses. And most importantly, my voice. But the damage was done. Trust had cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. And cracks change how things hold weight. As I sat in my living room that Sunday evening, I realized something heavy. Winning had revealed who wanted to stand beside me. and who wanted to stand over me. They had counted me out, then tried to box me in. But I was no longer the quiet woman in the loose chair. I was paying attention now. And the next challenge wouldn't be about money. It would be about loyalty. Because when control fails, people test your heart. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. By the time Monday morning came, I already knew something else was coming. When people fail to take your power quietly, they try to take it emotionally. And that kind of trap is harder to see. I woke up early, before the sun, with that familiar tight feeling in my chest. Not fear. Awareness. The kind that comes when your spirit knows you're being watched, not by eyes, but by expectations. I made my tea slowly, listening to the kettle whistle, grounding myself in the sound. Stay calm, I told myself. Stay clear. The phone rang at exactly 8:14 a.m. Marcia. I let it ring twice before answering. Yes, I said. Her voice was soft, too soft. Mama, she said, can we talk today, just you and me? I leaned back in my chair. About what? I asked. There was a pause. About fixing things, she replied. Fixing. That word again. I exhaled slowly. Say what you mean, I said. She swallowed. Aunt Lorraine is really hurt, she said. She feels like you shut her out. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, did she say that or did you? Another pause. She asked me to call, Marcia admitted. There it was. I'll listen, I said carefully, but I won't be cornered. We just want dinner, she said quickly. Tonight, family only. Family only. No witnesses. No paper trail. No protection. I saw the shape of the trap clearly now. I'll come, I said. Her relief was instant. Thank you, Mama, she said. But I added one more sentence. At a restaurant, I said, public. The relief disappeared. That's unnecessary, she said. No, I replied. It's required. Silence. Then, okay, she said. I hung up and sat very still. They weren't trying to talk. They were trying to reset the old rules. Where love meant obedience. Where forgiveness meant surrender. Where I was expected to soften first. I spent the rest of the morning preparing, not emotionally, but practically. I called my lawyer. Told him where I'd be. I texted Mrs. Jenkins. Asked her to check in later. I printed copies of my financial summaries and placed them in my bag. Not to threaten. To anchor. At noon, Lorraine called me directly. Her voice was warm, careful. Evelyn, she said, I hope you're not holding on to anger. I smiled to myself. I'm holding on to clarity, I replied. She chuckled nervously. Well, we all want what's best for you. I nodded. Then tonight should go smoothly, I said. She didn't like that answer. The restaurant was quiet, but not empty. Soft music. Other families scattered around. Safe. I arrived first and chose a table with good lighting and clear sightlines. Old habits die hard. Marcia arrived next, eyes darting around. Lorraine followed close behind. Caleb came last, already irritated. No hugs. No greetings. Just tension sliding into seats. Lorraine started immediately. Evelyn, we're worried about you, she said. I raised my hand gently. No, I said, we're not starting like that. She blinked. Then how? She asked. With honesty, I replied, not fear. Caleb scoffed. You think you know better than everyone now? He asked. I turned to him calmly. I know better than letting you decide my life, I said. Marcia flinched. Please don't fight, she whispered. I looked at her. This isn't a fight, I said. It's a boundary. Lorraine leaned forward. We were trying to protect you, she insisted. From what? I asked. She hesitated. From being alone, she said. I smiled sadly. I've never been alone, I replied. I've just been underestimated. Caleb shook his head. You're being stubborn, he said. No, I replied. I'm being awake. That's when Lorraine revealed the final move. We've spoken to a facility, she said quietly, just to gather information. I set my fork down. I told you not to, I said. We didn't commit to anything, she rushed. We just wanted options. I opened my bag and calmly placed the papers on the table. So did I said. They stared as I slid each document forward. Bank statements, rental income summaries, legal letters. Here are my options, I said, in black and white. Marcia's eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to do this, she said. Yes, I replied gently. I did. Lorraine's face hardened. You think money makes you right, she snapped. I met her gaze. No. I said, it makes me independent. Caleb leaned back. So what now? He asked. You cut us off. I shook my head. No, I said. I redraw the lines. They waited. Respect, I continued, is the price of access to me now. Silence wrapped around the table. Lorraine looked at Marcia. Marcia looked at me. Mama, she said softly, what if we mess up? I reached across the table and took her hand, then let go. Then you learn, I said, just like I did. The bill came. I paid it. Not to prove anything, but because I could. As I stood to leave, Lorraine spoke one last time. You've changed, she said. I turned back. Yes, I replied, and I'm proud of that. I walked out alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. That night at home, I sat in my living room and looked around. No voices telling me who I was. No plans made without me. Just quiet. The good kind. They had tried one last trap. Guilt. Fear. Love twisted into obligation. But I had stepped around it. Not angrily. Not loudly. Just firmly. Because when people count you out, they expect you to beg to be counted back in. I didn't. I counted myself. And the wins were no longer quiet. They were undeniable. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. After that dinner, the phone went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Heavy quiet. The kind that presses on your ears and makes you wonder who decided to stop trying first. I didn't reach out. Neither did they. And in that space, something important began to happen. The first morning after the restaurant, I woke up expecting tension. Instead, I felt calm. Not relief. Clarity. I made breakfast slowly, sitting at my kitchen table with the sunlight pouring in like it had permission again. For years, my mornings had been shaped by anticipation. Who might call, what might be needed, which problem I would be asked to solve. That morning, there were no demands. Just me. And it felt strange. By mid-morning, I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I smiled faintly. So this was what it felt like when you stopped being everyone's emergency contact. I spent that day doing small things I had put off. I reorganized a drawer. Went for a walk. Sat on my porch and waved at neighbors. Nobody rushed me. Nobody corrected me. Nobody suggested I shouldn't be doing that. Each small moment stacked into something larger. Freedom. The second day was harder. Silence starts to talk after a while. It brings memories. Voices. Doubts. I caught myself wondering if I had gone too far. If I had been too firm. If I should have softened my tone. Then I remembered Lorraine's letter. Marcia's fear. Caleb's laughter. And I reminded myself, peace that requires shrinking is not peace. On the third day, Mrs. Jenkins came by again. She didn't knock this time. She tapped lightly, like she knew I might be resting. "You all right?" she asked. I nodded. "I am," I said, "just learning something new." She smiled. "Learning what?" "How quiet can be a gift," I replied. She laughed softly. "That takes most people a lifetime," she said. That afternoon, I received an email from the agency. Short, professional, neutral. After review, no further action is required at this time. I closed my eyes and exhaled. That chapter was closed. But I knew my family wouldn't take that news easily. That evening, Marcia finally called. Her voice sounded tired. "Mama," she said, "I didn't know it would go this far." I leaned back on my couch. "That's because you didn't ask," I replied. She sniffed. "I was scared," she admitted. I softened my voice. "I know," I said, "but fear doesn't give you the right to take someone's life from them." She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," she whispered. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. "I don't need apologies shouted," I said. "I need respect shown." "I can do that," she replied quickly. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Then we'll take this slowly," I said. The next day, Lorraine sent a message. Short. Careful. I hope we can move forward. I read it twice. Then once more. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry. Because I wasn't ready to pretend nothing had happened. The shift in power was clear now. They were waiting on me. And waiting felt unfamiliar to them. By the end of the week, word had spread quietly through the family. Not gossip. Truth. People who had once nodded along with Lorraine began reaching out. Cousins. Old friends. Even a nephew I hadn't spoken to in years called to check in. "You always were strong," he said. "They just forgot." I smiled. "I never forgot," I replied. With the noise gone, I started thinking bigger. Not reckless. Intentional. What did I want my life to look like now? Not just safe. Full. I took a short trip the following weekend. Nothing fancy. Just a small town 2 hours away. I packed my bag, locked my door, and left without asking permission from anyone. At the motel, I sat by the window and watched the sunset. Alone. But not lonely. I thought about the years I had lived on pause. Waiting. Adjusting. Explaining. Apologizing for needing space. And I realized something painful but freeing. They hadn't taken my life from me. I had handed it over. And now I was taking it back. On Sunday evening, while I was away, Lorraine called again. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was strained. "We need to talk," she said. "This distance isn't healthy." I smiled. Distance is only unhealthy when it exposes truth. When I returned home, my house felt welcoming. Not small. Not lonely. Mine. I made tea and sat down with my notebook. I wrote a new page title. My next chapter. Under it I wrote, travel, learning, peace, choice. That night I dreamed. Not of arguments. Not of fear. But of standing tall in a room full of people who finally listened. The next morning brought something unexpected. A knock at the door. I opened it to find Lorraine standing there. No warning. No message. Just her. Her eyes were red. Her posture uncertain. "I thought you weren't speaking to me," she said. I stepped aside. "I didn't say that," I replied. "Come in." She sat carefully, like she wasn't sure she belonged there anymore. "I don't like how things have changed," she said. I nodded. I do, I replied. That startled her. You used to trust me, she said. I trusted you to love me, I replied, not manage me. She looked down. I was scared of losing you, she said. I leaned forward. You almost did, I replied softly. She swallowed. So what happens now? I met her gaze. Now, I said, we learn how to talk without power games. She nodded slowly. Not convinced, but listening. That was new. After she left, I sat alone again. Not shaking. Not second-guessing. Just steady. I had survived the silence. I had learned from it. And now something was shifting. They had counted me out. I had counted my wins. But the real victory wasn't money. It wasn't independence. It was this. I had taught them that I was not optional in my own life. And the next chapter would test whether they truly understood that, or whether I would have to walk alone. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The hardest test doesn't come when people fight you. It comes when they soften, when they sound gentle, when they say the words you've been waiting to hear. That's when you have to be most careful. Lorraine's visit stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because she apologized. She didn't. But because she almost did. That almost sat heavy in my chest for days. I went back to my routines. But my mind kept circling one question. Was I strong enough to stay free when they finally tried to love me better? 3 mornings later, Marcia called again. This time, she didn't rush. She didn't cry. She didn't sound scared. She sounded sincere. Mama, she said, I've been thinking a lot. I waited. I want to understand you, she continued, not fix you. That sentence cracked something open inside me. Because it was the first time she hadn't centered herself. We met for coffee later that afternoon. Public again. That was non-negotiable. She arrived early and stood when I walked in. Small gesture. But I noticed. She didn't talk right away. She wrapped her hands around her cup and stared at the steam. I grew up watching you handle everything, she said quietly. And when Daddy died, I thought you'd fall apart. I raised an eyebrow. But I didn't, I said. She shook her head. No, she replied. You got quieter and I mistook that for weakness. That hurt. But it was honest. I thought stepping in meant loving you, she said. But I see now, I stepped over you. I took a slow breath. That's the truth, I said. She nodded. I know. Then she said the words that almost pulled me back. I miss how things used to be, she whispered. That's when I felt it. The tug. The old instinct to comfort. To smooth things over. To say it's okay. But it was. And pretending it would cost me everything I'd fought for. I don't, I said gently. She looked up, startled. I don't miss being small, I continued. I don't miss being managed. And I don't miss being loved only when I stayed quiet. Her eyes filled. But I still want you in my life, she said. I nodded. That depends on how you show up, I replied. She reached across the table. Then stopped. Waiting. Permission. I noticed that too. Tell me how, she said. I leaned back. No decisions about me without me, I said. No fear disguised as help. And no more treating my age like an ending. She nodded again. I can do that, she said. I believed her. But belief doesn't mean surrender. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Lorraine. Family meeting, Sunday, everyone wants to clear the air. Clear the air. That phrase is dangerous. It often means burying truth under politeness. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I went for a walk. The sky was wide. the air cool. I thought about the woman I had been for most of my life. The peacemaker. The one who swallowed discomfort to keep others comfortable. And I asked myself a hard question. Would attending that meeting move me forward? Or pull me back? I slept on it. In the morning, I knew the answer. I texted Lorraine. I'll come, but I won't be interrupted. The reply came quickly. Of course. That word again. Sunday arrived heavy with expectation. When I walked into Lorraine's living room, everyone was there. Caleb. Cousins. Aunts. People who hadn't called me in years. They smiled too brightly. Like they were rehearsed. Lorraine opened with prayer. Long. Careful. Protective. Then she smiled and said, "We're here because we love Evelyn." I nodded. "So am I said. A few heads lifted. Caleb spoke next. "Auntie, we just worry," he said. "You've been acting distant." I smiled softly. "I've been acting honest," I replied. The room shifted. One cousin said, "We just want peace." I nodded. "So do I said. "But peace without respect is silence, and I've done enough of that." Lorraine cleared her throat. "We all make mistakes," she said. I met her eyes. "Yes," I replied. "But some mistakes take power, and power must be returned." Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. Necessary. Marcia spoke up. "She's right," she said. We crossed lines. Lorraine looked surprised. Caleb frowned. "But she didn't let us explain," he said. I leaned forward. "You had years to explain," I said. "You chose control instead." That landed. Lorraine tried again. "So what do you want now?" she asked. The room leaned in. This was the moment. The one that would decide whether I stayed free. Or stepped back into the old cage, dressed as love. "I want relationship," I said slowly. "Not ownership. I want care, not commands. I want love that doesn't panic when I stand tall." No one spoke. I stood. "I'm not angry," I said. "But I am done pretending." I looked around the room. "I counted my wins," I continued. "And the biggest one is this. I finally chose myself." Some eyes filled. Some hardened. That was fine. I didn't need agreement. I needed truth. When I walked out, my hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Because I knew something now. They could invite me back into old patterns. They could soften their voices. They could almost apologize. But freedom doesn't live in almost. And the next moment would show me exactly who could walk with the woman I had become. And who would be left behind. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The days after that family meeting felt different in a way I hadn't expected. Not lighter. Clearer. Like fog lifting slowly, revealing the road ahead whether I liked what I saw or not. I had said the truth out loud. And once truth is spoken, it doesn't crawl back into silence. The first thing that changed was how people spoke to me. Not kinder. More careful. Phone calls came with pauses now. Words were tested before being released. No one told me what I should do anymore. Instead, they asked. That alone told me everything. But change always demands a price. And mine came sooner than I thought. 3 days after the meeting, Marcia called again. Her voice was tight. "Mama, Aunt Lorraine fell this morning." My heart dropped. "Is she okay?" I asked. "She broke her wrist," Marcia said. "They're keeping her overnight." I closed my eyes. Family doesn't disappear just because boundaries arrive. "Where are you?" I asked. "At the hospital," she replied. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long moment. This was the moment. The one that tests every boundary you've built. The one where people expect you to fold, because now it's serious. I knew if I rushed in the way I used to, something inside me would quietly break again. So I chose carefully. I'll come, I said. But I won't be blamed, and I won't be controlled. Marcia exhaled. I understand, she said. I hope she did. At the hospital, the lights were too bright, the air too cold. Lorraine lay in the bed, her arm wrapped, her face tired and smaller than I'd ever seen it. When she saw me, her eyes filled. You came, she said. Yes, I replied softly, because I wanted to, not because I was told to. She nodded slowly. That mattered. For a while, we didn't talk about anything important. Doctors, pain medicine, weather. Then she looked at me and said something I never expected. I was afraid, she whispered. I waited. Afraid that if I didn't manage things, I'd be left behind, she continued. I sat down beside her bed. That fear made you forget I was a person, I said gently. Tears slid down her face. I see that now, she said. I believed her. Not because she said it perfectly, but because she said it quietly. Caleb arrived later. He didn't joke, didn't argue. He just nodded at me. That nod felt heavier than any apology. That night, I drove home alone. Exhausted, but steady. I realized something important on that drive. Choosing myself didn't mean abandoning others. It meant showing up whole instead of hollow. The following week brought more changes. Marcia started calling just to talk. Not to manage. Not to warn. To listen. Lorraine stopped making plans for me. She asked instead. Some habits died hard. But they were dying. Still, one final test remained. The biggest one. It came in the form of a letter. Handwritten. Shaky. From Lorraine. Inside were words I never thought I'd read. Evelyn. I spent my life believing control was love. I was wrong. You didn't just count your wins. You taught me how to count mine without stepping on yours. My hands trembled slightly as I folded the paper. Not from weakness. From release. That night, I stood in front of my mirror again. The same woman. But not the same life. I chose myself, I whispered. And for the first time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt powerful. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because choosing yourself once is brave. Choosing yourself again, when the world finally starts to adjust, is what makes it permanent. And the next chapter would decide if the change lasted. Or if this was only a pause before the final reckoning. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The strangest thing about change is this. Once people finally adjust to your strength, they start testing it. Not loudly. Quietly. With small requests. Small comments. Small expectations that sound harmless until you recognize them. It began with favors. Can you just drive me real quick? Can you hold on to this for me? Can you talk to him for us? He listens to you. Old patterns dressed up as kindness. I noticed them. Every single one. A week after Lorraine came home from the hospital, she called me in the afternoon. Her voice sounded softer than usual. Evelyn, she said, the doctor says I'll need help around the house for a bit. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. She paused. I was hoping you could stay with me for a while. There it was. Not help. Relocation. Again. In the past, I would have said yes before the sentence finished. This time, I breathed first. I can help, I said. But I won't move in. Silence. Then a careful, disappointed sigh. I thought family. Meant support, not sacrifice, I finished. Another pause. She didn't argue. That told me more than words ever could. The next test came from Marcia. "Mama," she said one evening, "would you consider putting my name on one of your accounts, just in case?" Just in case. Those words had teeth. I smiled gently. "No," I said. She sounded surprised. "But what if something happens?" "Then I've already handled it," I replied. She hesitated. "You don't trust me." I answered honestly. "This isn't about trust," I said. "It's about boundaries that protect both of us." She didn't like that answer, but she accepted it. That was new. Then came the final test. The hardest one. The one that would have broken me before. Caleb showed up at my house, unannounced one afternoon. He looked tired. Older. Not angry. Just worn down. "Auntie," he said, sitting across from me, "things are rough." I waited. "I messed up," he admitted. "Money, choices, everything." I nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," I said. He leaned forward. "I need help." There it was. The old pull. The familiar tug at my chest. I had bylaid him out before. More than once. Each time thinking it would be the last. I looked at him carefully. "What kind of help?" I asked. He swallowed. "Alone," he said. I didn't answer right away. I thought about the nights I lay awake worrying about everyone else. The sacrifices. The silence. The way my needs always came last. "I won't give you money," I said calmly. His shoulders slumped. But I will help you plan," I continued. "I will listen. I will guide. I will not rescue you from lessons you need to learn." He stared at me. Then something unexpected happened. He nodded. "Fair," he said quietly. That word hit harder than any apology. After he left, I sat alone for a long time. Not sad. Not proud. Just steady. I hadn't explained myself. I hadn't justified. I hadn't softened the truth. And the world didn't end. That evening, I realized something powerful. I had spent my whole life explaining my worth. Explaining my choices. Explaining my needs. And suddenly, I didn't feel the urge anymore. People started adjusting in real time. Conversations changed. Requests became respectful. Some people stepped back. Others stepped up. That's how clarity works. Late that night, Marcia texted me. "I'm proud of you." I stared at the screen. Then smiled. Not because I needed her pride, but because it came without conditions. I stood by my window and looked out at the quiet street. "I counted my wins," I whispered. "And the biggest one wasn't money. It wasn't independence. It was this. I had stopped explaining myself to people who benefited from my silence. Tomorrow would bring one last moment. Not conflict. Closure. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that settles. And in the final chapter, I would decide what kind of ending my life and my story would truly have." The morning I decided to count my wins out loud, I woke up before the sun. Not because I was worried. Not because I was restless. But because my body knew something important was ending and something better was beginning. I sat on the edge of my bed and let the quiet settle around me. No phone buzzing. No voices pulling at me. No plans waiting to be approved. Just breath. Just choice. Just me. For most of my life, I had counted my wins silently. Surviving. Enduring. Holding things together when they were falling apart. Those wins were invisible. Uncelebrated. Expected. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't counting wins to survive. I was counting them to honor myself. I made coffee and carried it to the dining table, the same table where my family once sat and asked what I had left. I smiled at the memory. Not bitter. Clear. I pulled out my notebook, the same one that had seen tears, plans, anger, and truth. On a fresh page, I wrote, MY wins. Then I stopped, because this list wasn't about money, or property, or independence. It was about becoming whole. Win 1. I stopped apologizing for still being alive, for needing space, for saying no, for changing. I let that sink in. Win 2. I learned the difference between love and control. Love listens. Control interrupts. And I stopped confusing the two. Win 3. I stayed standing when silence tried to scare me back into obedience. That one almost made me cry. The phone rang mid-morning. Lorraine. I answered. Good morning, I said. Her voice sounded different now. Gentler, slower. I was thinking about you, she said. I smiled. I hope kindly, I replied. She laughed softly. I wanted to thank you, she said. For what? I asked. For not giving up on me when you had every right to, she admitted. I closed my eyes. That was my choice, I said. Not my obligation. She paused. I understand that now. And for the first time, I believed her. After the call, I wrote again. Win 4. I showed people how to love me by showing myself first. In the afternoon, Marcia came by. She knocked. Waited. That alone told me everything. Mama, she said when I opened the door, I brought lunch. We ate together quietly. No fixing. No correcting. No hidden agendas. Just presence. Halfway through, she looked at me and said, I used to think strength meant taking over. I waited. Now I see it means stepping back. I nodded. That lesson cost me years, I said gently. I'm glad you learned it sooner. Tears filled her eyes. I'm proud of you, she said again. This time, it landed. After she left, I stood in my living room and looked around. My house. My life. My pace. I realized something that made my chest warm. I didn't feel like proving anything anymore. Not to family. Not to neighbors. Not to the world. Because proof is for doubt. And I no longer doubted myself. That evening, I went for a walk as the sun dipped low. Neighbors waved. Some stopped to talk. They asked about me, not about what I needed help with. I answered honestly. I'm doing well, I said. And I meant it. When I returned home, I sat one last time at my table and finished my list. Win 5. I stopped explaining my worth to people who benefited from my silence. Win 6. I chose peace without shrinking. Win 7. I trusted myself again. I closed the notebook and placed my hand over it. For a long time, I had believed my best years were behind me. That usefulness expired with youth. That relevance faded with age. They counted me out because they thought my story was finished. They were wrong. That night, as I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Same face. Same years. But a different woman. One who stood tall without permission. One who loved without surrender. One who finally said, I'm not done. Because counting your wins isn't about numbers. It's about moments you chose yourself when it was easier not to. It's about walking forward, even when no one claps. It's about realizing that freedom doesn't come from being rescued. It comes from standing. They counted me out for good. The next day, I counted my wins. Out loud. And this time, the world heard me. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.